Yes, sir, man. Top of it. Back again. Gonna call this one no copyright. But hope everybody doing good, man. Wanted to double back, and I would call this audio today exclusive. But um, I'll be speaking more so from personal experience and just projecting my thoughts outward. And if it resonates, it resonates. If it doesn't, then it just doesn't. But um, it's so easy to judge, others, point the finger, make an excuse, blame, to be discouraged, to cultivate depression, and all the wrong things. Like, all of those things are easy because it's just a matter of decisiveness. And I want to propose the same, in regard to a better and higher life, because it's easy, uh, you know, in regard to decisiveness, too. But the thing is, a lot of people are more used to, creating and actually putting, noteworthy time, effort, and energy into things they really, you know, don't want to see in real time, from a grandiose perspective, like in a grand scheme of things. Like, you wouldn't want to see that, if you knew that you were wasting your time or hindering yourself, from thinking a certain way. And a lot of people, know the right answer. Like, we know instinctively what we need to do sometimes, but there's usually something holding us back. There's like a sense of bondage and a sense of, being like shackled down and not being able to change, not being able to see different or visualize different, for any significant length of time. And um, it's easy also, to kind of look at, say, others' experiences, bad experiences, like maybe, or things that, may seem rewarding, because somebody got to express themselves in an overt and aggressive way and really like dominate another person, energetically or, physically, spiritually, in any regard. And it's easy to sometimes look at the mediocrity around you, or look at, you know, say some people being uh, negative or positive in the wrong direction, or, just kind of living and operating, conducting, themselves out of a state of mediocrity. And you can see that, and rather than learning from others' mistakes, learning from others' experiences, you could kind of justify your actions and your inability to, do anything significantly. And that's cool, like, if that's your decision, but also you have to be mindful, um, that you're not excluded, and, you know, you will be held accountable. So it's, no need to be discouraged, or, to regret, anything, when you had ample opportunity, to achieve and to accomplish what it is that you wanted to accomplish. Yet there was something that was hindering you from acting on your own behalf. And looking down later in life, um, you don't want to see yourself in, a lesser state. And it makes you think you don't want to take advantage of, your youth, now. And that's not to say, don't live your life, don't enjoy yourself, don't do things, but also too is just to be focused and have a purpose, in your heart and mind, and be serious about that purpose, because a lot of people would automatically increase and add to their value, if they took themselves a little more seriously, if they conducted themselves a little more seriously, you know, even like a business, like in thinking about what most people say they actually want, out of life. A lot of people, would say they just want the money, they want to be happy and everything, and they're cool with that. But yet their actions are all, baited towards getting attention and maintaining attention or being acknowledged significantly or excessively in certain instances, or having a certain hold or pull on certain people. But I say all of that to say is the easiest thing, for me to, do significant work over time and to really, create a solid reputation, credible reputation, honorable reputation, is really, following God's law and God's commands, and not only, just saying that on surface level, but really earnestly, trying to behind closed doors, even when there's no cameras or eyes on me. And that's really where the real battle and the real work starts with everything in regard to your life. And really, um, I'm sincerely grateful and appreciative, to God, for rescuing me, from the state that I was in. And I don't take, you know, that process lightly, the dross being removed, from your character and getting out of being the lower version of yourself. And not only, you know, that I don't take it lightly, I don't excessively acknowledge it. I don't need to, always express it because it's expressed in my act and, my actions, not my act, because it's not an act. There is no insincerity. That's my character, that's my desire. But, you know, humans sometimes are fooled to believe that they know better than God, but God's ways are not our ways, and the human eye is never satisfied, you know, and rather than going for quantity and, hoarding, different things, following, God's command, you'll live abundantly, and I get that it could seem uh, like a scam or a myth, or like some type of scheme, from the outside looking in, say, listening to somebody like myself. But at the same time, I never come on these videos, asking for funds or anything like that. And I'm not gatekeeping, the information, that I'm privy to, you know, and my value isn't contingent upon, a dollar bill. But also I know that money follows, the mindset. So I'll be blessed abundantly just because I've already, uh, managed and learned to cope with others living abundantly, and sometimes living even more prosperous than myself. You know, but understanding that I'm not uh, discriminated, to anything, and really whatever it is that I desire, I really can attain, and it's just that simple, with nothing else in between. But I say that to say, that strength and that character, and that belief comes from, God, and that's the only place it could come from. I would say everything else um, is either a variation or a spinoff, of the original, and the original is the one that we can't see, and the mind of man is the mouth of God. But really, even to our inmost being, God formed us, and He knows our heart, so He knows our steps, and He definitely knows our thoughts. But like I said, uh, the mind of man is the mouth of God. So think about that, and God isn't limited to human beings, and it says don't swear by heaven or by earth, because the earth is the Lord's footstool, and heaven is His abode. So it's tough, sometimes, um, witnessing or experiencing, things with others, and you see others, suffer in certain regards, but also you understand, the justness of everything and the timing of everything, and nothing is out of order, and everything is exact in its time, and rather than doing a lot of different things well, try to do one thing extremely great. And I would say like that one thing that needs to be great is cultivating that relationship with the Most High, because then that's the quickest way to discover your true gifts, and also too that's the number one arsenal and tool bag, you know, in real time, but also too that lifestyle is so I shouldn't even say so sweet, because goodness doesn't necessarily mean ease, but the thing is, once you sincerely and earnestly commit to the Lord, and you honestly restrain yourself, from doing what you can, but it's not good for you, you know you get wealth in abundance without paying in toil for it, because again, God isn't thinking like you thinking that you can be manipulative, and that you actually have a chance or possibility of deceiving God, and because it says that you know one could be equal with God, that you actually could be equal with God. God is just referring to a certain degree that you can reach, if you were earnest, but really there isn't a comparison, you know, and the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. So knowing that, you know, you know that you know nothing, and that your best bet is, following Him to the best of your ability, and being happy and resting and doing that. But also understanding you don't have to be limited to anything. You don't have to live in fear, and that you have the best backing that you could possibly have. When you got God, inside you, and you're operating and carrying out His will. And I would say, probably to conclude the audio, nothing trumps your purpose. So it will seem like sometimes things could provoke or antagonize you, but rather than reacting or being noticeably bothered or disrupted or flustered, by anything, you know, raising your character and your standard even more so, and surprising even yourself with how you move, you know, by living for God, and understanding that, God is inside you, and also too, you living for God, He'll never leave or forsake you, even to the ends of the earth. And honestly, just, lighten up a little bit. Enjoy yourself. Um, Sometimes when other people taking it uh very seriously and extra aggressive, that's what you need to be the opposite. Not saying being lackadaisical or, not being cautious of your surroundings or not taking anything seriously, but understanding that, you know, the most serious business that you can be involved in, you're involved in. And that's, carrying out the Most High's work. But the Most High will, tell you to restrain yourself and to treat others how you would want to be treated, and if you have an issue with your neighbor, you know, solve it before, he takes it to court and puts you to shame. But, you know, God is great at the end of the day, and, his word is true, and it trumps anything that we could fathom. You know, to him who we ask that is able to do everything exceedingly and abundantly through the power that worketh within us. Trying to get some jazz going. But I said no copyright just because sometimes, you be want to vibe, you know, do your thing with the classic music or, the update, the new school music, whatever. But it's actually from multiple, you know, people, and it's like a spirit of greed to where people think, if you mention their name, if you reference them in any regard, that everything that you make and labor for automatically is needs to be wired to them. And so now to counteract that, a bunch of platforms, companies, and institutions, really just had to protect themselves. That's where the copyright, comes from. But I would say some audios will have, some actual music with lyrics and everything like that. But for the most part, I don't want to get too much of a rapport of being copyrighted and having these videos flagged and everything. But yeah, man, nothing, trumps God's will and God's purpose. And aligning yourself with God's will and God's purpose is as simple as, focusing on yourself and being the best that you can be, for the little bit of time that you're here. I would say, you know, trying to carry out, a fictitious, fantasized legacy is a chasing after the wind. That's all vanity. But sometimes you actually have people that actually will try this and try to move like this. I would say, you know, they're wasting the time. They're wasting their time, but also too is like you just jeopardizing your safety by testing God. Because it clearly says, "Do not test the Lord thy God." So I would say, disregarding the law or living contrary, to the law is really doing a disservice to yourself. Nobody else really, and dressing it up with other things and um, clinical diagnosis for say conditions and states. I think that's for if you're trying to be cheesy, but for you know simplicity's sake, and so everybody could comprehend, you know the audio is the reason I speak in the way that I do. And because whoever is highest among you will be, servant to the least of you. And really, there is no least of you, right? And even if somebody is living completely, you know, contrary to, God's word, and they may be harming others and kind of living lawless, you know, just make sure the log is out of your eye before you throw a stone, at others, and understand that it's always, another level that you can go to, and you could improve your situation even more. You could become more rich in spirit, and rest in that. Have your confidence in God. Put all your confidence in God, and don't trust in men. Not saying live in anxiety and not to trust anyone, but put in, trust in, man, and deviating from what God, wants and commands. You're doing it to yourself, and I, I can't come up here and lie to you, and I can't come up here and uh, talk haughtily or talk out of a sense of pride, because at the end of the day, I'll have to deal with the repercussions from that. So it's sometimes there's things like I want to directly touch on, but it's no need to mention names or nothing like that. And that's where the saying, um, or that's why I reference, nothing trumps God's will, because that's how I feel in regard to when people want to get a reaction out of little old you, but really, I'm saying little old you, being sarcastic, because people wouldn't be trying to provoke you if you was little, but also too, you're only grandiose, and you only you know such a force and a factor in the mountain of an individual is because you humble yourself before God, and you humble yourself before God, He'll exalt you. Uh, I think that's the perfect way, to conclude today, and I'm gonna be tapped in, especially I got day next week, Memorial Day. We all gonna be, home for that day, but I'm gonna drop some, new audio content between now and then. But definitely will be some more things in the work. And again, like always, hope you're doing good. Hope you happy. And I hope you prosperous. God bless.